A new Space Marine model and some prices for some other characters, the offering of some free Tyranids in Warhammer stores, some interesting rules coming for the Voidsmen at Arms, and a few other things about Games Workshop's news and releases over the past couple of weeks. Hello and welcome back to Warspecs Tactics, but today I thought it would be interesting to go over a whole clutch of minor release stories that Games Workshop has had over the past couple of weeks or so. Some model reveals, some pricing, some upcoming rules, and a few other bits and bobs. Generally things that didn't really warrant an entire video all to themselves, I think, but I thought would be interesting enough to some people on the channel. Starting out with those free Tyranid offerings, Games Workshop does try and add in a few incentives for people to try and visit their Warhammer stores, and each month they do a free miniature of the month. Sometimes it's Age of Sigmar or other fantasy type offerings, quite a bit it's 40k. It seems that this one's returning to the Tyranids, and the free miniature of the month is a Neurogaunt, one of the slightly smaller kind of parasitized gaunts that has the node beast clung to its back, and they act as essentially extra neurons for the Tyranid swarm, carrying the synapse signals from bigger beasts down to smaller beasts, even if they might be further away. These ones are just free miniatures that don't have any strings attached. If you go down to a Warhammer store, then you get one of them, at least while stocks last anyway. Apparently plenty of places might have had them from the 2nd of March. Could be worth a stop in if you wanted just a random Tyranid mini to paint up as a little painting project. I wouldn't say it's something that's interesting enough to actually bother going out of your way for otherwise though, particularly with 40k 10th edition rules, meaning that if you don't have a full squad of them, you couldn't field them in a game legal sort of way. Otherwise, in that same article, they also mentioned a few other things. Their collectible coin of the month is the Dark Angels one. You can get that from the store if you spend a certain amount on Warhammer minis within the same month. Some people kind of like them, might be interesting enough as an objective marker or something if you play the Dark Angels. I feel like these things are kind of relevant to some people that have a shop within easy travel distance. It's not going to be very relevant for people out in the country, where their nearest Warhammer store might be literally hundreds of miles away. Next up, we've got a new Space Marine miniature called Tybolt Mar. This guy was revealed last Thursday, another entry in their Horus Heresy character series. I feel like these miniatures are usually at least kind of interesting for 40k collectors. Lots of them I feel like are suitably generic enough that they could be appropriated either by the Loyalists or the Heretics. Apparently the lore behind this guy is that he's the captain of the Sons of Horus 18th Company, dispatched by Abaddon the Despoiler to try and hunt down the remnants of the Salamanders, Raven Guard, and Iron Hands following the Drop Site Massacre. The shattered remnants of those legions still apparently being strong enough to pose a threat to be a thorn in the War Master's side. I feel like as internet reaction goes to these models, this one maybe hasn't generated anywhere near as much of excitement as a few of the other Horus Heresy miniatures they've released. Perhaps it's partly just because we've seen the vast majority of the other miniatures painted up in a Sons of Horus paint scheme, and they are a legion that's had at least a fair few character support choices before. The iconography and styling of him just perhaps feels a little bit similar to other stuff that we've seen. I feel like if you'd told me he was a generic console just with a few Sons of Horus bits kit bashed onto him, I probably would have believed you. Perhaps one of the most interesting bits of the model though is his sword. He gets a Xenos tech weapon called the Culling Blade. A bit different to your usual power sword there, I suppose. Pricing wise, he'll likely be around £27.50, $43 or €35. Here's a resin miniature, and they tend to be priced at a premium, slightly above Games Workshop's other characters. Let me know what you think of this guy though, down in the comments below. One thing I was kind of curious to check in on was how well the Solo Auxilia box set sold. This was the big battle group box set that was the launch for their faction in Heresy. I feel like compared with some of the Heresy box sets, it had more interest from Warhammer 40k fans as well. A new sculpt for a Lehman Russ plus a whole load of cool void armoured, essentially guardsmen. Definitely seem to have a few people interested in the box for miniature purposes alone. Though I feel like it's maybe a little bit less certain that non-mainstream 40k box sets sell out absolutely immediately. It does feel like the vast majority of Battle Force box sets go that way, unless GW manages to make them super undesirable for one reason or another. And certainly things like kill teams tend to go pretty instantly. Taking a look at the Warhammer web store, it looks like it's sold out in the EU and Europe, at least centrally, though it does look like it hasn't sold out in the USA, Canada and Australia. Always does feel like a bit of a novelty when you have some sort of big launch box and it doesn't just get sold out in minutes and then get put on eBay for marked up prices. Taking a look at some third-party retailers, it looks like the channel affiliates that I've got linked in the video description do have a few, In the UK, it looks like Element Games is stocking them at £130, so that does look like full price without their normal 15% discount there. Feel free to buy through them if you'd like, though it does look like a few other sources from the UK might still be selling for less. I guess that they will sell out faster than Element Games does if they're not reducing the price. Otherwise, from a channel affiliate, it looks like Fenris Workshop has 10% off on these guys over in Canada. Again, that's links down in the video description if you wanted to get these guys at a bit of a discount over there. Let me know what you make of these guys though. We'll be interested to hear from anyone who is on the fence about getting one. For Warhammer 40k rules, it looks like we're getting an interesting set of combat patrol rules for the Voidsmen at Arms. The other week, Games Workshop did a preview of White Dwarf 498 and mentioned a force called Vantarian's Voidsmen, a combat patrol force for the Navy Breachers and the Voidsmen at Arms apparently. And this one is following in a theme of putting combat patrol rule sets in the White Dwarf magazine. The mainstream ones have their rules printed in the codex or are free for download, and they actually come in the box sets that are sold by Games Workshop as combat patrols. It looks like White Dwarf is allowed to have a bit of creativity though, and make some rule sets for things that don't actually come in the same box set or anything like that, so unfortunately this isn't any sort of discount deal. Over the past months, they've come out with some rule sets for the Space Marine Vanguard Marines. They are the ones that are sold in that Vanguard Task Force that is a sort of minor discount deal with the Monopose Marines, and the Tyranids von Ryan Leapers one. That one was completely nothing to do with any sort of box set, and just goes all in on a Tyranids, Lictor and Leaper force. Will be fun to see exactly what they come out with the army. I'd guess there might be multiple squads of Navy Breachers. And it'd be kind of fun to see if they do any interesting stratagems or enhancement things like that. That's not something we've seen for any Navy Breachers or Voidsmen, though I guess it's not impossible if they do release some sort of Codex Agents of the Imperium at some stage. In any case, not super relevant if you're not playing Combat Patrol. I do quite like these fun bonus rule sets that they're coming out for it though, for people who do. Could be another way to build up some small forces of miniatures with a bit more purpose. I aim to cover the rules in one of these Roundup videos sometime later on the channel, so feel free to subscribe if you'd like to see that. Back to some Space Marines once more, and a whole bunch of Resin Forge World miniatures have gone on sale for the Horus Heresy. Again, can be kind of interesting for character choices for the Loyalists or Heretics. I feel like that Stormseer console for the White Scars could be a particularly interesting one. The White Scars in 40k aren't exactly a chapter that gets very much representation aside from their Worn Corsaro Khan miniature. Fun to have perhaps a fairly generic-ish character that could proxy in for a librarian or maybe a chaplain at a pinch. It looks like he's £26.50, $42 or €33. There's also an Apothecarion detachment, which is basically just two apothecaries. You get the two of these guys for £30, $47 or €38. Interestingly enough, if you did want to get two Space Marine apothecaries, then this one will work out as a better deal compared with just getting the Primaris Apothecary individually and buying that miniature twice. Obviously these guys do have a bit of a different feel to the Primaris miniatures though they are big, chunky, and I feel like they wouldn't look out of place scale-wise. It's not really too often that you can look at Forge World and have literally any argument that it could be the economical choice. There are a couple more though, the Dark Emissary console and the Siegebreaker console. I feel like both of these miniatures went down really quite well when they were showcased on the Thursdays. The Dark Emissary does feel like he'd make a very good Dark Apostle if you wanted a different sculpt for him. This guy maybe being a little bit more formal and not quite as depraved looking as the 40k miniature, armed with a big staff and a nice skull in an 8-pointed star sort of trinket. The Siegebreaker console gets a great big hammer and gets a fun readout display where he's planning to flatten some enemy fortifications with artillery. He's a little bit more, £27.50, $43 or €35 compared with the rest. For 40k applications of him, I saw a few people suggesting that you could perhaps graft on a servo arm and he'd make a fairly effective tech marine. Seems at least fairly reasonable for most armies that have a hammer-armed character though. Otherwise, for something that I found interesting is that Games Workshop's announced a new merch festival. They're calling this Warhammer Relics, and it basically looks like it's going to be a minor event in their calendar going forward, a focal day for all the merch creators to try and aim for, where they focus on some sales and coming out with announcing a few cool things. Perhaps one of the more interesting departures from Games Workshop is they're partnering with a cosplay company called Bergschneider. They do a whole bunch of fancy cosplay sort of supplies and have decided to make a Warhammer one. As a more historical sort of creative though, they're going to be focusing on the old world as opposed to anything Warhammer 40k, and they showcased a Northern Empire swordsman here. I think that's kind of interesting for having some sort of official outlet for that kind of thing. Of course, cosplaying is a hobby in its own right. It'll be interesting to see how much demand there is for that. I wonder if at some point in the future we'll see someone come out with some 40k style cosplay things. Otherwise, beyond that, though, they did have a few other reveals around their merch, displayed to quite into their 40k things. They're these sort of metallic posters, and they've got a few Space Marine type ones and a few other things going on. The Weta Workshop had a few teaser shots for their next Space Marine statue. We saw the one for Lieutenant Titus, which did look rather spectacular. The next one is Abaddon the Despoiler, and they showed some bits of his head and armour, though not the full model yet. If you want one of those, it's likely to set you back really quite a bit. I seem to remember that Lieutenant Titus statue they came out with was approximately £1,000, could be a fair bit more if Abaddon's significantly bigger, which you'd kind of expect. Finally, out of the other merch offerings, one of the other things that caught my eye is that they're doing a sort of ultimate guide to 40k miniatures. I guess a big sort of almost catalogue-y kind of book showcasing their different ranges and also showing a few miniatures through the ages. I feel like that's the sort of thing that quite a lot of hobbyists might really have some interest in. Feels like it could be something that's genuinely interesting as a gift for a fellow hobbyist for a birthday, perhaps. Finally, looking to the future, here's just a few releases and new things that should be coming out fairly soon. We do have quite a lot of 40k release weeks confirmed on the schedule already. I'd guess that the two next big boxes will be the Kroot Hunting Pack box plus Kill Team Nightmare. Both of those have been teased for quite a while now, the Hunting Pack in January. And for Kill Team Nightmare, we only got the official full reveal in January as well, but those Night Lords have been showcased since December now. That's one that's taken a bit longer to materialise than I thought it would do. I'm sure Drukhari players are keen to get their hands on some new resculpted mandrakes as well. Otherwise, we've got the Orcs and Custodians battle forces and their codexes. Will be interesting to see if they drop on the same weekend, which could be a busy one for 40k model news. And then likely sometime after the Kroot Hunting Pack box set release, we'll get the Tau Codex individual release, with the new Kroot kits beyond the ones that came in the Hunting Pack, things like the Lone Spear, the other Shapers, and the Hounds. Otherwise, for learning more things from Warhammer 40k, Dark Angel's points should be out sometime this week, hopefully. I'll certainly aim to cover those on the channel. For model releases, Adepticon might well be the next set of reveals for 40k things. Not sure how heavily they'll focus on 40k, and I guess it might be Chaos in the crosshairs there. There could be some Grimdark things relevant from Horus Heresy and Kill Team as well. Otherwise, maybe one other question is what they're doing with the Combat Patrol box sets. We know that Orcs, Tau, and Custodians are all on the way. That will likely mean some rehashing of Combat Patrol boxes. It might be only when we actually see the codexes, though, that they're discovered for good. As per normal, it does seem like there's going to be quite a lot to talk about on the model news front. In any case, I think we'll leave that there for this one. Let me know your thoughts on the new models, prices, and upcoming things. Look forward to hearing any insights or anything that I missed down in the comments. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics, but I'll certainly keep the regular 40k videos coming. I do tend to post new ones most days. Finally, if you have been enjoying all the videos on the channel, I would just like to mention that Auspex Tactics does have a Patreon page as well, and you can find that linked in the video description if you'd like to help support and keep these coming. Channel patrons do get a fair few advantages, seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and automatic entry into the regular prize giveaways with a chance to win some big model kits each month. If any of that sounds good to you or you'd just like to help support, the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.